Gathering Birmingham. My name's Danielle. My pronouns are she, her.
My name is Faith. My pronouns are she, her.
And today is one of our online gatherings, and this is a special third Sunday that we're kind of establishing in the month that's about trying to do things collaboratively and in partnership. And you'll see later on today, some of us are taking a little field trip to Liverpool to see John Bell from the Ione community speak, and as part of the Open Table gathering there. So if you'd like to, you can zoom into that as well, and there'll be some details on our website and on our social media. So just to say about inclusive gathering, whether you're gay or straight, whatever your gender identity, whatever your race or ethnicity, you're really welcome. And we try to do, like, I've started saying variety is the spice of life, because we do something a little bit different every week. Church doesn't have to look the same all the time. And so our online gathering today is actually sort of a collaborative thing with Faith and I are both part of the Red Letter Christians UK network, and we both were part of leading a Red Letter Christians book club a few weeks ago, and we thought we'd share a little bit of that book club and a little clip from it, and Faith is going to introduce the clip in a second. I'll just say the book was called Being Interrupted. Mm-hmm. She interrupted me. Being Interrupted, Reimagining the Church's Mission from the Outside In. And it was written by Al Barrett and Ruth Harley, who Al is, you might know him, he's a Birmingham-based CAV minister at Hodge Hill Church, and a friend. He was part of our Christians at Pride celebrations a few weeks ago. And Ruth and he wrote this book together based on their experiences of mission in the Hodge Hill community, and it was a really helpful discussion. Do you want to just introduce the clip that we're going to show?
Sure. So in the segment of the talk that we're going to watch, Ruth and Al are discussing the concept of rewilding, which is a popular term in gardening around here now, I gather. And it's really about relating to church mission. It has to do with not having to be in control and managing every aspect. Like, there can be, for people like us who come from positions of privilege, there can be this idea that we have to always manage and control and direct things. And so the concept of rewilding in terms of the church's mission and in like gardening and nature is about really like allowing oneself to be led by the Spirit, allowing kind of nature take its course, if you will. Mm-hmm. So this segment, they're talking about what that means in terms of the literal rewilding in nature, and also in the church's mission, like what it means to like not always center ourselves for the people who have the position and privilege to feel like they have to be at the center of things.
Yeah. And just to say, like, that you can get a lot out of what they say without having read the book, and so it might maybe pique your interest in finding out a little bit more. And you can watch the whole book club discussion, which is up online on YouTube, and we'll share a link to that. But we're going to just share this little clip of our discussion around being interrupted.
It struck me was when you were writing about wilding. And, it is when you start talking about these ecosystems and, to just let a place wild and just, and I thought, that is just such a great idea, especially now where we are at now, in churches and places like that. And then immediately I realized that there is a lot of wanting to cultivate back to how it was before. So I was wondering if you can say something about how we can help ourselves and others to actually allow that wilding to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's a fantastic question. Yeah, the kind of wilding metaphor, that metaphor of it's a metaphor of letting go of control, really, or rather, we're actually really careful about how we speak about this. It's not letting go of control, it's letting go of the illusion of control. Because actually we're not really in control in the first place. We just like to think we are. But letting go of that desire to be in control, letting letting things spring up in exciting and challenging and strange and disruptive ways. I think it's all of us, I think, have somewhere in us that desire to get a grip on something, to hold on to it, to keep control, to be kind of steering something. And it's a continual letting go and letting go again. And for me personally, one of the things that I find really helpful in that, whether it's literally with my, I have to say, quite wild garden, or metaphorically with the church, is really consciously asking myself, well, what is beautiful here? What are those strange things? But what also are the things that I don't know what they are yet? So I moved house in the summer. I've got a lot of things in my garden that I don't know what they are yet. It may or may not become clear. But similarly, in a church, letting things grow in their own time and saying, well, I've noticed this. And I don't really know what it is yet, but I'm just gonna let it be for a bit and see what it turns out to be and what that where we might be going with that. I think because it is quite hard not to revert back to wanting to be in control of stuff. I think one of the things that I've found really helpful is doing that with somebody else. We're back to that dialogue thing again, because there's a little bit of accountability of being able to say to one another, have you noticed that you're sort of managing that situation in a way that maybe you don't need to be? Or because often we just don't notice we're doing it. Particularly those of us who, for whatever reasons of privilege that we might have, are used to our way of doing things being the way of doing things. It's just noticing when we're doing that, when we're slipping back into that and saying, well, hang on a minute, what's the alternative here? What else can we do? Al, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, Ruth, I was struck by your phrase about noticing what's beautiful. And I love that as one of the ways of kind of shaping this approach. And I think I wanted to say a yes and to your sense of kind of doing that in dialogue with others, because I guess one of the things that shapes our tendency to want to cultivate things is our particular perception of what counts as beautiful. And actually, you know, when we talk to others and when we listen to others about actually what are you noticing here? What for you is beautiful in this situation? Actually, we often find ourselves surprised. You know, it's a bit like our different responses to a work of art or something that for some people it might be hideous, but for others it kind of is life-changing. And I think one of the things, so our description of wilding is rooted in a book by the wonderfully named Isabella Tree, and the book's called Wilding, and it's the story of her and her husband changing their approach to a large amount of farmland in Sussex. And one of the places where they hit the most conflict with neighbours and with authorities and with people passing through was that some of it actually started looking really messy and ugly, and also involved leaving, for example, animal carcasses to die and decompose in the space that they were responsible for, rather than, you know, the normal approach in farming is that if an animal is sick, you take it to an abattoir and get it kind of clinically killed and disposed of. And while that's quite a gruesome image, actually it reminds us that the ecology within which we live depends on death and decomposition as part of those cycles of growth and life and development. And I think it really struck us as we wrote the book that often the church although our story is rooted in a story of a death, actually is really scared of embracing dying and death and decomposition. You know, we have this narrative so often of focusing on growth, of healthy churches and kind of, you know, building up the sides of the barrel that are looking a bit leaky, and all those images that are about sort of shoring up and defending and sort of focusing on the ways in which the machine and the communities and the individuals within it can be resilient. But actually, we're much less good at acknowledging that the places where we're fragile, the places where we've lost or are losing, the places where things are dying and actually are unsightly and ugly and all the rest of it, are precisely also places within the ecosystem where life is happening and where life is springing up and where God is present. And I think trying to find a way of thinking about life that pays attention to those places and those processes just feels so important for us as a church and as a human community at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's a really helpful yes and I think my next yes ands to that would be where the church does speak about death, we're very often speaking about it as a prelude to resurrection, which of course, you know, is the narrative of our faith. But sometimes we're in a hurry to get there. And actually there's something, so one of the big influences on both of us is Shelley Rambo's work around sitting in the Holy Saturday space, you know, with that space between death and resurrection. And I think that's one of the things that I find, so one of the metaphors that we use towards the end of the book is about decomposition. And decomposition as a source of life, as a source of resurrection, sort of resurrection from the compost heap. I think decomposition is a really helpful kind of a metaphor, because it's a slow process. And it's not a neat, tidy, again, we're back to what Faith was saying earlier about those testimony stories that have a happy ending. And I think the temptation to use death or loss as the setup for a happy ending is one to be really, really strongly resisted, because it doesn't do justice either to that sense of death and loss, or actually to that sense of the possibilities of resurrection hope. I think engaging with the complexity of that and engaging with the sort of the long-term nature of decomposition as a metaphor, I've found that a really helpful and kind of life-giving, which is what decomposition is ultimately. It's a life-giving thing, but not life-giving in that kind of triumphalist way. When my compost heap decomposes and produces something which will make my vegetables grow, that's not a victory over death. That's acknowledging that death and decay and decomposition are in themselves life-giving and part of a cycle of death and resurrection, growth and decay. I find those metaphors really helpful, and also really helpful in enabling us to be less anxious. So one of the things that we identify strongly in the book is the Church of England, which is our own location. We don't want to try and speak for anywhere that we are not located, but the Church of England certainly as a very institutionally anxious church. And I don't think it is actually just the Church of England, but that kind of institutional anxiety about the future, about how do we keep growing, about all those sorts of things. I think embracing decomposition as a metaphor has helped me to resist some of that anxiety, certainly, and I hope it helps others.
Hi, I'm Rachel Handley, and we're just going to do a prayer together. If you'd like to, you can join in with this. Lord of heaven and earth, you started us in a garden. You formed us from that good dirt. Every day you breathe life into our dusty bones and pour living water on our clay hearts. Let us start here. Let us begin together now with you, with this ground beneath our feet. Though it may be heavy laden with traces of lead paint and microplastics hardened with blood-red clay, sparkling with broken glass, tainted with arsenic from years of abuse, we trust that you have the power to redeem every inch of this earth. We are starting here with willing hands and hearts. Bring your healing to our soil. Let us get our hands dirty with the work you have given us. We remember the tears of ancestors, sisters and brothers pushed off of this land. We honour the bones of ancestors, sisters and brothers pushed to work this land. We lament the tyranny of ancestors, sisters and brothers pushed by greed to exploit this land. Lord, bring your healing to our soil. Get our hands dirty with the work that you have for us. Bless the sweat, bless the tears, bless the bones. May you bring life and redemption to the ground beneath our feet. Lord of resurrection, in your mercy, send earthworms, nematodes, rhizomes, and protozoa. Let them find a home in this soil. May it be crawling with life that our eyes may never see. Lord, bring life to the ground beneath our feet. Let the dirt beneath our nails remind us of your resurrection power. Amen.
And next week we are back in person. We're going to be at the Edgbaston Quaker Meeting House, and we're also going to live stream. And we're trying something sort of old, sort of new. If those of you who are around IGB from the start know that we used to run a monthly thing called Real Talk, where it was an opportunity to talk about something like an issue or discuss something important to us that really matters in life. We're bringing that back, and we're adding afternoon tea to it. So next week at Edgbaston, we're having Sarah Bruce, who is a mental health advocate. She was a service user herself, and now she advocates for people trying to navigate the really complex and painful mental health system that we have in Birmingham. And so we're going to be chatting with her. There'll be time for Q&A and time for afternoon tea together, some food. And for those of you who'd like to join online, you can watch on Facebook Live and YouTube. And then also, if anybody wants to be part of the kind of table discussions, we're going to have a way of trying that in a hybrid way. So if you'd like to zoom in for that, there'll be information about that too. So that's it for today. We've got a couple of little visual announcements at the end if you didn't catch what I just said. And I'm just going to close with our blessing. May we live fully, may we love wastefully, and may we have the courage to be all that God has created us to be. We'll see you soon.